Hi, I am Greg Hayne of the Hayne Coaching Group. In this short video, what I want to do is help you address something that virtually every service department that I have ever worked with in my 15 years of training service departments seems to not understand or at some level has problems with. So if you want your service department to roll, you're going to have to fix your roles. Let's jump into this. To understand roles, we're going to back up a step and we're going to start at the beginning. There are only two things that happen in service. Only two. We get revenue. We go out and we sell stuff. And then after we sell it, we execute it. That's it. Everything that happens in service is either to generate work or to execute it. All right. So keep that in mind as we go through this, because I'm laying out a structure for how you can think about roles. There's only 4 roles in service. First is revenue generation. Whether you call them salesmen, estimators, account managers, business development, assessors, inspectors, whatever you call them, when they're doing that, they're trying to generate revenue. That's needed. Okay. But understand that's what's happening. It's not about inspections, it's about generating revenue. It's not about selling, it's about generating revenue. Second role, service tech. The guys or the gals in the trucks that are doing the actual work. Third, the role is what I call service coordinator. This is a non-technical role, and it's involved with the organization and execution of the work. Next is what I call the technical role. The title is normally service superintendent. The service superintendent is also involved in organization and execution of the work, but he's also involved in training. It should be his responsibility to be responsible for all aspects of training the crews. What's not required is a service manager. Now, I understand that there's got to be somebody that's responsible for the department. I get that. But they don't have to be given the title of service manager. I know somebody that's got 18 service trucks in multiple states, no service manager, works great. So there is no role in a service department that required for a service manager because they're not required. Now, especially with smaller service departments, an individual could be operating in many of these different roles, and that's okay. But when we have that happening, that's where confusion and inefficiencies start to come in, especially if we really don't understand the roles and responsibilities. So let's further define these roles. We're going to start on the revenue generation side. Whether you call them salespeople, business development, account managers, inspectors, estimators, assessors, ultimately, they're about generating revenue. If you have a service superintendent up on a roof and he sees something and he does an inspection while he's up there, he is no longer a service superintendent. He's now doing revenue generation. Now, his title doesn't change, but his function has changed. You don't need to change anything, but you need to be aware of that. And last, field techs and managers. If you've got field techs up on the roof and they're looking for upsell opportunities, which they should be doing, okay, as soon as they start looking for upsell opportunities, they're no longer field techs. They're salespeople. They're in the revenue generation role. If you have a manager, whether you're calling him a service manager or an integrator or whoever happens to be, if you have anybody up on a roof doing anything in the way of inspecting or estimating or talking with customers about more work, they are no longer managers, they are revenue generators. Keep that in mind. Let's move on to the execution side. And by the way, there's nothing wrong if they're doing that, but do understand that when they're doing that, they're putting on a different hat. So now we're going to get to the execution side. We've been given work. The coordinator is responsible for receiving incoming leak requests, scheduling things, processing work, getting the work orders set up and processing them, reviewing completed work orders to make sure the paperwork is right, sending out invoices. They're responsible. Someone's responsible for AR and AP. Those are coordinator roles, even if their title's not coordinator. If they're involved in sending out invoices or paying bills, the role that they are in is coordinator, even if their title is accountant, but they're doing a coordinator role. And collections. Again, you may have a account manager doing collections on some overdue accounts. When he's doing that, he may be the guy that needs to be doing it, but he's really doing a coordinator role. Next, the technical role. And by the way, the coordinator doesn't need to know anything about roofing. We'll come back to that. The technical role is commonly called service superintendent. This person has to know what a roof is. They're responsible for training crews on roofing and on the apps. It's especially important that they be the trainer of the apps, because all the problems that you have in the field with the guys with the apps are because they don't like doing it, right? Well, the superintendent doesn't like doing it either. If you make him responsible for the training, he's going to have to figure out how to do it. And when the paperwork is crappy, it's his fault, not the crew's fault. It's his fault. He needs to get better. He needs to make sure the guys have the right stuff in their trucks. If there's a scope job, he needs to do pre-cons to make sure that okay, fix this roof, don't fix that roof, and fix this stuff, don't fix that stuff. He needs to do that. On some crews, it may not be required, but on most crews, it is. And then he needs to go back after it's done to make sure they did it right, because they will miss stuff. And you don't want your customer to say, hey, I was up on the roof and I thought you were going to take care of X, and I've paid you in full. What up? You don't want those calls. And you'll get them if the superintendent is not checking the work on scope jobs. Next, field techs. They fix the roof. Pure and simple. And last are managers. Regardless of what title you decide to give them, if they are involved in scheduling or processing a work order or doing collections, they're no longer a manager. They're now doing a coordinator job or maybe a service superintendent job. And it's okay if you're going to have them do that. But don't be confused about what's happening. Because as your department grows, you get pinch points. And the reason you get pinch points is because somebody gets overloaded. And maybe they're overloaded because they're not doing their job. Maybe instead of doing scheduling, the manager should be doing more managing. Or maybe the manager's managing because you need more coordinators. So you need to understand what the roles and responsibilities are so that you can manage staffing. Let's do a little deeper dive now into where I see people go wrong. The coordinator role doesn't need to know anything about roofing. They don't. Now, they may need to know that we can't send crew A to this property over here because they don't get along with the maintenance man, or they don't have the security credentials to get in the prison. Okay. Or we don't send crew B over to that property because it's a coal tar pitch roof and they don't have any idea how to fix a build-up roof, much less a coal tar pitch roof. That information can go into a book, and by the way, it should go into a book or into your app so that anybody can sit down and have access to those special things and nobody has to remember it. The coordinator doesn't need to know anything about roofing. They do need to be good at customer service. They are the primary touch point for your customers. This is not what I often see when things aren't working well. Next, the service superintendent needs to stay out of the office. He should never be involved in the scheduling or organization. Now, yeah, he needs to go to the coordinator that's going to do the scheduling and say, I have a scope job coming up, and it's going to take a crew of 2 guys 3 days. He doesn't, but then the scheduler decides when that's going to be done, and they can do that in conjunction with a conversation with the superintendent. That's okay, but the superintendent doesn't do the schedule. The coordinator does the schedule. As I said, he must check contract work to make sure it's properly done. This is something I see regularly not being done because he's too busy doing stuff he shouldn't be doing, like scheduling and checking paperwork. And he is almost always the wrong person to put in charge of the department. And it's almost always what I see small contractors doing. They put a roof guy in charge of the department because they think surface has got something to do with roofing, and it doesn't. Repair and maintenance is what you do to a roof. Service is what you give to a customer. Not the same thing. Not related at all. And they don't understand that. And perhaps you don't either. Moving on. Estimators, inspectors, roof techs, managers. Don't expect them to sell effectively. Yes, they may be able to farm. They may be able to secure more work from an existing customer. But they can't hunt. They can't go out and bring in new customers. And, you can go out and you can farm, and you may double the size, you may triple the size of your service department, and then all of a sudden all the growth stops. That's because you're doing all the work for the customers that they have. You took work away from all your competitors, but now you got to go get more. And to do that, you need hunters. Now, it's okay if you don't have hunters right now. You don't need to run out and get one, but don't expect your estimators and assessors, your managers, your roof techs to be effective at selling, because most of them won't. And by the way, this is not my opinion. This is science. So I've highlighted these 2 areas that the superintendent's the wrong person to put in charge of the department, and don't expect those particular roles to be effective at selling. Here's why. We do behavior assessments. This is a graphical representation of the behavior of a coordinator. This is a DISC, D-I-S-C graph. Now, I'm not going to explain to you all the intricacies of what the graph means, but here's what I will tell you about that big green bar and that big blue bar. They love processes. They love procedures. They love precision. They love routine. They are reliable. They are both task and oriented and supportive. And you absolutely need that in a coordinator in your department. You do. But here are some other things about them. They tend to be perfectionists, and they're terrified of making mistakes. They hate change. They are typically not customer friendly. They're slow to make decisions, and they're not risk takers. This is also a typical profile for a superintendent, service superintendent, and for an estimator, an assessor, an inspector. If you put them in charge of your department, it won't grow. It won't. I've got a contractor right now. When I started working with him in an informal way, like 5 years ago, he had like 4 trucks. He still has 4 trucks. He says, "Oh, everybody loves my service manager." I bet they do. But he is a perfectionist that's afraid to make mistakes. He hates change. He's slow to make decisions. He's not a risk taker, and their department's never going to grow as long as he's in charge. That's just the reality of it. So what does a salesperson look like, a revenue generator, a hunter look like? Notice those bars there? Now watch what happens when we go to the next slide. They reverse. They're the opposite. They are the opposite behaviors. True salespeople have urgency. They decide quickly. They're customer friendly. They're not afraid to fail and make mistakes. They're risk takers. They are, in short, entrepreneurial. So, in this short video, what I've tried to do is give you a framework for understanding how roles work. So when you look at the people in your department, you can go, oh, actually, he's doing a coordinator role and he shouldn't be doing that. Oh, he's trying to sell. He's not being very good at it, but it's ridiculous for me to expect that he would be. If we really want to sell more, we're going to need to have someone else be involved in that. Understand those things. And then alter your people to fit the role requirements, and things will start to happen. Hope that helps. If you found this helpful, we're glad to do a discovery call with you and take an hour and actually dig deeply into your organization, a service organization, and try to help you. I won't try to sell you anything. I'll just try to help you. If you want to know about what we can do, we'll be glad to talk about that, but we won't push that. We'll push helping you. So you can reach out if you'd like that, and we'll be glad to. Hope this has helped today. Have a great day.